I was thinking recently about a very specific moment from this past week where life simply did not go according to plan.
Oh, yeah. We all have those weeks.
Right. I mean, I had placed a tremendous amount of hope into this situation involving my family. I had all these expectations built up, you know.
You get a picture in your head.
Exactly. I had this whole picture in my mind of how a certain conversation was going to unfold. And in the span of a single afternoon, the entire thing just fell apart.
Wow. That is rough.
It was. It was a sudden, just jarring letdown. And if I'm being entirely honest, sitting there in the aftermath, it felt deeply unfair.
I know that feeling so well.
You ever have those moments where the disappointment is so sharp it almost takes your breath away? Like you're just like standing in the wreckage of your own
I've worked
expectations?
out that sensation intimately, yeah. It's
Oh.
the kind of letdown that, well, it doesn't merely inconvenience your schedule, but it actively hurts your spirit.
Yes, exactly.
It shifts your whole perspective in a matter of seconds. I mean, one minute you're looking forward to the weekend or some relationship milestone, and the next minute, the floor drops out from under you.
Right. You just get that heavy, sinking feeling in your chest.
Exactly.
I've realized that when I'm dealing with disappointment, I have this instinct to just reach for a volume knob to turn down the noise of the hurt. Maybe that knob is food, or staying busy, or just shutting down emotionally.
The problem is you can't selectively turn down the volume.
Right.
When you turn down the pain, you're also turning down your ability to feel God's peace or the love of your family. You end up living in this muted, gray world.
Wow. Yeah.
Recovery is about finally being brave enough to leave the volume up and trusting that even when it's loud and it hurts, God is right there in the middle of the noise with you.
That idea, just leaving the volume up when everything inside of you is screaming to turn it down, that is really the core of what we're tackling in our time together today. We're asking one central, defining question, which is, how do you handle pain and disappointment?
And that single question, honestly, it dictates so much of our daily lives, whether we consciously recognize it or not.
So true.
The way we answer that question shapes our relationships, our mental health, and, our spiritual walk.
And it marks a crucial turning point for us in this journey. I mean, for those of you walking this road of recovery alongside us, you know that our time focused on step one and principle one has been deeply rooted in exploring where it came from.
Right. The origins.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time looking backward. We needed to understand the family dynamics, the childhood origins of our struggles.
The soil that we grew out of, basically.
Exactly. We had to identify those early wounds.
Which is a completely necessary foundation. I mean, you cannot address the fruit of a struggle without first identifying the root.
No, you really can't.
But there comes a moment where looking backward is no longer sufficient for moving forward.
And that is the transition we're making right now.
Hmm.
We are shifting from where it came from to how it works now.
Yeah.
This is no longer about the historical context. This is about your immediate visceral reactions to life's letdowns and hurts in the present day.
The right here, right now.
Right. Like when the phone call brings bad news at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
or when your spouse says something insensitive, or the job promotion goes to someone else. What is happening inside of you in that exact minute?
Because pain never asks for permission.
Never.
It doesn't send a calendar invite. It arrives entirely uninvited. And human beings, we naturally dislike sitting in discomfort, so over the years we've developed a set of automatic reflexes to deal with it.
Like an automatic response.
Exactly. Think of it like an internal thermostat.
Okay, I want to explore that internal thermostat idea. Walk me through the mechanics of how that operates when disappointment strikes.
Sure. So every house has a thermostat set to a comfortable baseline temperature.
Right.
Well, when the temperature of our emotional pain gets too high, when things get uncomfortably warm with disappointment, hurt, or rejection, we possess an automatic mechanism that attempts to cool the environment down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it kicks on without us ever consciously deciding to adjust the dial.
It just happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the tragedy is, even if that so-called cooler manages to temporarily drop the temperature of the pain, it usually ends up hurting us more in the long run.
Because it freezes everything else too.
Yes, it
Yeah.
freezes out the good, healthy aspects of our lives right alongside the bad.
Which raises a pivotal question, I think. How often do we even realize we are reacting in these moments?
That's the thing.
Like, does this reflex happen so quickly that we trick ourselves into believing we're making a conscious choice?
That touches on the powerful illusion of control. These reflexes, they bypass our intentional thoughts completely.
Wow.
They happen in a fraction of a second. You feel the sting of the letdown, your internal thermostat registers the spike in emotional heat, and the cooling system initiates.
And we walk around telling ourselves that we are handling our disappointment.
We really do. We think, I am making a rational choice to deal with the situation in this specific way.
But we aren't.
Not at all. In reality, we're not choosing anything. We are defaulting to ingrained habits. We're running on a script that was written decades ago to protect us when we didn't know any better.
So we convince ourselves we're the ones steering the ship, making strategic decisions about our emotional well-being. But the autopilot has actually taken over.
Exactly. We are entirely reactive.
Because these responses are so automatic and so deeply woven into our daily rhythm, the only way to find freedom is to intentionally disrupt the pattern.
You have to interrupt it.
Right. We have to slow down, we have to stop and identify our personal go-to moves when life hurts.
Yeah, if we do not name the specific reflex we lean on, we remain completely at its mercy.
Let's slow it down then. When the hurt arrives and that internal thermostat registers the heat, we generally reach for certain automatic responses.
We do.
We try to manage the hurt in ways that feel protective in the moment, but are incredibly destructive over time.
And these responses are practically universal. The specific flavor might change from person to person, but the underlying mechanisms are incredibly consistent across human behavior.
One of the most prevalent ways this manifests is the instinct to simply brush the pain aside. We minimize it.
Oh, yeah. Minimizing is huge.
This might be the most culturally acceptable reflex we have. This is the tendency to look at a devastating situation and just say, it's fine, when it is categorically not fine.
Because we are conditioned to do this from a very young age.
We really are.
Society rewards people who do not make a fuss. We learn quickly that expressing genuine pain makes other people uncomfortable.
Right, it ruins the vibe.
Exactly. So we package our disappointment into socially acceptable, bite-sized pieces.
It's that reflexive shrug. A friend betrays a confidence, or you miss out on a massive opportunity you worked years for. And when someone asks how you are doing, your immediate response is, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
We use phrases like first world problems to essentially mock our own genuine hurt. We fall into this comparative suffering trap.
Oh, the comparison game is dangerous.
We tell ourselves, well, I shouldn't complain. Other people are dealing with actual tragedies. My disappointment over this relationship or this career setback isn't a big deal.
That comparative suffering is a brilliant way to avoid feeling. But pain is not a competition.
No.
Just because someone else is dealing with a severe illness does not mean your heartbreak over a failed friendship is invalid.
That's a great point.
When you minimize your own pain, you are essentially lying to yourself.
You're lying to yourself, and you are lying to God. That is the insight that really gets me.
It's convicting.
It is. We look at a genuine bleeding wound in our soul, and we pretend it is just a minor scratch. And when we do that, we completely invalidate our own lived experience.
And if you invalidate the experience, you prevent the healing process from ever beginning.
Right. You can't heal what isn't there.
Exactly. You cannot apply medicine to a wound you refuse to acknowledge exists. Minimizing sounds brave to the outside world. It sounds like resilience.
People might even praise you for being so strong and unbothered.
Right. But true resilience requires unflinching honesty. When you stand before God and tell him it's fine, you are effectively closing the door on his comfort.
Wow.
God is the God of truth. He wants to meet you in the stark reality of your disappointment, not in the polite, sanitized fiction you present to the rest of the world.
I see this happen so often. We minimize and minimize, trying to convince ourselves the heat isn't that bad. But eventually, the internal temperature gets too high.
The thermostat has to adjust.
Yeah. Minimizing is no longer strong enough to keep the pain at bay. So the thermostat kicks to a different gear. We transition from trying to ignore the pain to actively trying to numb it. We start medicating the hurt.
This is where the consequences become highly visible, though the intention remains the exact same, which is avoidance.
When we talk about medicating, the mind immediately goes to the obvious substances like drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And certainly those are profound and devastating ways people try to turn down the volume of their pain. But medicating is a much broader category than that.
It encompasses any habit, any substance, or any behavior we use to intentionally alter our internal state so we do not have to sit with the discomfort of disappointment.
It could be pouring that heavy glass of wine every single night just to take the edge off the stress of a job you resent.
Yeah.
Or it could be turning on the television and binge-watching a show for 6 straight hours until you fall asleep, ensuring you never have a single moment of silence to sit with your own thoughts.
Busyness is perhaps the most deceptive and socially rewarded form of medicating in our modern culture.
Oh, absolutely.
We actually praise people for this. We applaud the person who works 60-hour weeks, who volunteers for every single committee, whose calendar is booked solid from dawn until dusk.
Because they look so productive.
Right. But very often, that hyperactivity is just a frantic attempt to outrun a deeply seated disappointment.
If I never stop moving, the pain can never catch up to me. I have found myself doing this.
Me too.
I will load my schedule with arbitrary tasks simply because the thought of sitting still in an empty room, confronting a failure or a letdown,
Yeah.
just feels intolerable.
And what happens when the tasks are done?
You're stuck with yourself.
Exactly. The moment the car turns off in the driveway or the moment your head hits the pillow, the noise of that disappointment roars back to life. You haven't resolved anything. You have just delayed the reckoning.
What we are really doing when we medicate, whether it's through scrolling social media, overworking, overeating, or substance abuse, is reaching for an external, temporary fix for an internal spiritual ache.
And that is the vital distinction. The ache is fundamentally spiritual.
Yeah.
It is a profound longing for wholeness,
Yeah.
a grief over the brokenness of the world and our own lives. You cannot cure a spiritual ache with a physical or external fix.
It just doesn't work.
You might successfully numb the symptom for an hour or a day, but the root remains entirely untouched. The tragedy of the medicating reflex is that it demands a constantly increasing dosage.
Oh, wow.
What worked to numb the pain yesterday will not be strong enough tomorrow.
The tolerance builds. If 1 hour of television distracted you last month, you need 3 hours this month.
Exactly.
If working late one night a week kept the loneliness at bay, soon you are working weekends too. It is an endless treadmill.
It is.
But even the strongest medication eventually wears off, or the side effects become too destructive to maintain. When the numbing fails, the suppressed emotion has to go somewhere.
It has to escape.
The pressure builds until we reach a point of explosion, and this is where we see the reflex of lashing out.
We take the deep internal pain and we convert it into outward anger.
We take the hurt and weaponize it into rage, irritability, or cynicism. This dynamic is fascinating to me, and I really want to look closely at the mechanics of it.
Let's do it.
Why is it so much easier for us to be furiously angry at someone else than to simply admit we are hurting?
It almost always comes down to the dynamics of power.
Power.
Yeah. When we experience a profound disappointment, the primary emotion churning beneath the surface is powerlessness. We feel small.
That makes sense.
We feel like life is happening to us and we have zero agency. Hurt and grief make us feel incredibly vulnerable, and human beings despise feeling vulnerable. Anger, on the other hand, is an intoxicating substitute.
Anger has momentum.
Yeah.
It has energy. When you are sad, you want to curl up. When you are angry, you want to stand up and fight.
Exactly. Anger is an active, aggressive emotion. When we lash out, we suddenly feel like we are back in control of the narrative.
Like we're doing something about it.
Right. It is a false power, but in the moment, it feels better than the crushing weight of vulnerability. It is remarkably easier to yell at a spouse for leaving a coffee cup on the kitchen counter than it is to look them in the eye and say, I feel like a failure at my job today, and I am terrified about our future.
The coffee cup becomes the lightning rod for all the unexpressed grief.
Yes, exactly.
We pick fights over trivial things because it allows us to release the pressure without ever addressing the actual wound. But the cost of that false power is astronomical. Lashing out transfers our internal chaos directly onto the people around us.
We are experiencing a violent storm inside of ourselves, and instead of seeking shelter, we deliberately try to make it rain on someone else.
We throw emotional shrapnel at the people we claim to love. And the tragic irony is that in doing so, we push away the very community we desperately need.
Yeah, because nobody wants to stand next to someone who is constantly detonated.
It destroys relationships. It creates an environment of fear and unpredictability in the home.
Which naturally leads us to the inevitable consequence of lashing out. When you've pushed everyone away with your anger, or when the effort of keeping up the fight becomes too much, you are left at the final reflex.
You retreat. You isolate.
You withdraw from the world entirely.
You experience a significant pain, and your immediate instinct is to hide. You stop answering texts.
You decline invitations to dinner.
You stop showing up to your small group, you pull the drawbridge up and withdraw into your own private silo.
Isolation is incredibly seductive because it promises safety.
Right.
The logic makes perfect sense to a wounded mind. You think, the world out there is full of unpredictable variables. People let me down, opportunities fall through. Therefore, I will retreat in here into my isolation where nothing and no one can touch me.
But that safety is built on a massive lie. We construct these fortresses of isolation based on terrible assumptions. What is the core lie driving this need to hide?
The primary lie is the belief that no one could possibly understand. The enemy loves to convince us that our pain is completely unique, unprecedented in human history.
Like we're the only ones.
Yes. The lie whispers that if we were to share the true depth of our disappointment, people would either judge us harshly or be repelled by our brokenness.
We convince ourselves we are uniquely defective. We think if they knew how much I was struggling with this, they would lose all respect for me. And there is a secondary lie intertwined with that, which is the idea that our pain makes us a burden.
Yes. We tell ourselves, I don't want to bring everyone else down with my heaviness. They all seem so happy. I shouldn't impose my dark cloud on their sunny day.
So we suffer in silence. We become islands. We think we are being noble by not burdening others, or we think we are protecting ourselves from further rejection.
But an island is a profoundly dangerous place to be when a hurricane hits.
Wow.
We are intricately designed by God for connection. We are wired at a fundamental level for community. When we isolate, we sever the very lifeline God has provided for our healing. We starve ourselves of the grace, perspective, and comfort that flows directly through other believers.
We have these 4 distinct automatic reflexes. We minimize the pain and pretend it isn't there. We medicate it to numb the sting. We lash out to feel a false sense of power. We isolate to hide from the risk of further hurt. On the surface, they look like very different behaviors. A person overworking themselves looks different than a person yelling at traffic, who looks different than a person hiding in their bedroom. But they all share a single, unifying objective.
They are all different flavors of avoidance.
The singular goal of every reflex is to avoid sitting in the raw reality of the pain. But here is the devastating truth we have to confront. Avoiding the pain does not eliminate it.
It never does.
It simply charges a steep compounding price to our mental and spiritual health.
It is an emotional debt that accrues massive interest every single day you refuse to face the reality of your hurt.
Let's talk deeply about that price, because the cost of avoidance is where things get truly devastating. When we try to handle life's letdowns by pushing them down, by deploying our internal thermostat to cool everything off, we end up becoming emotionally flat.
We cross the border into what we can call the gray zone.
I have experienced this muting effect in my own life, and it is a terrifying place to be.
It really is.
When I spend weeks or months actively shutting down my disappointment, trying to just grit my teeth, push through, and ignore the ache, I eventually wake up one day and realize I am living a completely monotone existence.
Yeah.
The landscape of my life has lost all its color. It is just a flat, unbroken plane of gray. Food doesn't taste as good. Music doesn't move me. I can't find the energy to laugh at a joke, and I can't find the tears to cry at a tragedy.
That ties directly back to the concept of the volume knob we opened with. The tragedy of the muting effect is a profound insight into how we are designed. You cannot selectively shut off just the difficult emotions.
Right.
It is a physiological, psychological, and spiritual impossibility.
If I numb the sorrow, I numb the joy right along with it.
Absolutely. The mechanism that blocks pain is the exact same mechanism that receives joy. If you build a wall high enough and thick enough to keep out the disappointment of a broken relationship, that exact same wall is going to block out the warmth of a new friendship.
That is so true.
When you block out the capacity to feel sorrow over a loss, you simultaneously block out your capacity to feel deep gratitude for what you still have. You mute the pain, yes, but you also mute your ability to feel the love of your family, the wonder of a sunset, the simple, quiet peace of a Tuesday morning.
You sacrifice the high notes to avoid the low notes.
Exactly. And you are left living your entire life in static.
It is a terrible, tragic trade. We trade the vibrancy of a fully lived life for a false sense of safety. We accept a heavily medicated existence just to avoid a few sharp edges. And the consequence isn't just an emotional flattening, it results in severe spiritual stagnation.
How could it not? How can you cultivate a vibrant, dynamic relationship with God if you are hiding behind a massive wall of emotional numbness?
You can't.
Right.
God operates in the realm of truth and reality. If we are constantly employing our reflexes to live in a muted, artificial state of avoidance, we are essentially making ourselves unavailable to him.
We are blocking him out too.
We cannot grow spiritually if we refuse to feel genuinely.
Yeah.
Emotional flatlining stunts our spiritual growth completely. It keeps us trapped in an immature state where our primary overarching objective in life is just pain management rather than genuine transformation.
And it deeply damages our connection to God because it twists our perspective of who he is.
How so?
Well, when we live in the gray zone, we begin to view God not as a loving father who walks beside us through the dark valley, but as a distant, failing manager who did not do his job of keeping the valley away from us in the first place.
Wow, yeah.
When we are numb, our prayers become hollow recitations. Our worship becomes a performance. We are just going through the motions, a shell of a person trying to survive until the end of the day.
Living in this gray present not only ruins today, but the numbness leaks forward. It corrupts how we view tomorrow.
It does.
We don't just stay stuck in the past or the present. The avoidance mechanisms lead us directly into a very specific, agonizing trap regarding our future. We start constantly expecting the worst.
This is a massive stumbling block for so many people walking the road of recovery. It is the mental health trap of negative anticipation.
Negative anticipation. Let's define that clearly for anyone who might be caught in this right now. This is the habit of trying to handle future pain by constantly, obsessively expecting the worst possible outcome in every scenario.
Right.
It is looking at a calendar of upcoming events, relationships, or opportunities, and proactively deciding exactly how they're going to fail, fall apart, or disappoint you.
It is a preemptive strike against hope. You kill the hope before it can even take root, so you don't have to mourn it when it dies.
I want to push back on this for a second to look at it from another angle, because I know the argument that immediately comes up. I have used this argument myself.
Okay, let's hear it.
Doesn't expecting the worst actually serve as a protective measure? If I assume things will go wrong, if I assume the job offer is going to fall through, or the friendship is going to end badly, or the travel plans will get ruined, I won't be caught off guard. I won't have the rug pulled out from under me. Isn't that just being realistic and guarding my heart? Doesn't it soften the blow of the disappointment?
It is a remarkably common defense, and the logic seems incredibly sound on the surface, but it is fundamentally flawed. Bracing for impact does not soften the blow of disappointment in the slightest.
It doesn't.
No, it just forces you to live through the misery twice.
Live through the misery twice.
Yeah.
That is a heavy, sobering realization.
Think about the mechanics of it. If you spend 2 weeks agonizing over the fact that a situation is going to turn out terribly, your body and your mind are experiencing the stress of that failure for 14 straight days.
Right.
Then, if the situation does turn out terribly, you experience the actual pain of the event. You suffered for 14 days, plus the event.
That's a lot of suffering.
Now, consider the alternative. What if the situation actually turns out incredibly well? You still suffered the stress and anxiety of failure for 14 days for absolutely no reason. Bracing for impact robs you entirely of today's peace.
I once heard it described like paying interest on a loan you haven't even taken out yet.
Yes, exactly.
You are writing massive emotional checks from today's limited peace to pay for a disaster that might never even happen. It is the absolute theft of the present moment. Emphasizing this is so vital. Negative anticipation keeps us locked in a state of continuous, buzzing worry.
We miss the present entirely.
We are so focused on the hypothetical storms of tomorrow that we entirely miss the grace God has provided for this exact moment.
Because God's grace is distributed daily. The Word of God talks about daily bread, not a month's supply of manna.
That's a great point.
Grace is given for the present reality, the present challenge, not for our imagined catastrophic futures.
We cannot genuinely trust God with our future if we are too busy trying to micromanage it with our anxiety. Negative anticipation is ultimately a severe issue of trust.
It really is.
It is looking at heaven and saying, God, I don't actually believe you will hold me when the storm comes, so I need to start weathering the storm in my mind right now, all by myself, just to be ready.
We wear our spirits out fighting phantoms. We deplete our emotional reserves, anticipating a letdown that hasn't even arrived. We spend all our energy shadowboxing with the future. And then when a real, tangible challenge does present itself in the present moment, we have absolutely nothing left in the tank to meet it with. We are tired before the fight even begins.
So we find ourselves standing at a profound crossroads. If our automatic reflexes, the minimizing, medicating, lashing out, and isolating, if they all fail us,
Right.
and if our numbing creates a gray, monotone existence that starves us of joy, and if our negative anticipation just forces us to suffer twice and steals today's peace, leaving us weary, disconnected, and hurting,
Yeah.
how do we actually break this cycle?
The answer is not trying to find a better reflex. You can't just swap out isolating for a slightly healthier version of medicating.
Yeah.
The answer requires a radical structural shift in how we process our struggles entirely.
And this is where we turn to the Word of God for the ultimate, definitive framework. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, we are given a clear instruction for this exact dilemma. Casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you.
That is one of the most profound directives regarding our emotional and spiritual burdens. It is a complete paradigm shift from how the world tells us to handle our pain.
I want to focus on the deliberate nature of the word casting. It is an intensely active word.
Yes, it is.
It is not a passive, fleeting thought. It is not just politely mentioning your worries in a quick 3-second prayer before you fall asleep. Casting is an intentional, forceful unloading.
A physical action, almost.
Imagine a fisherman throwing a heavy net out over the water, or a laborer heaving a heavy sack off their shoulders and dropping it onto the ground. It requires effort to let go. It is an active, intentional unloading of our anxieties onto Jesus Christ.
That concept requires us to rethink our entire modern approach to dealing with emotional weight. We hear the word processing constantly today.
All the time.
We spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to process our pain independently. We sit with it, we analyze it, we try to categorize it, fix it, or manage it until we can make sense of it.
But there is a severe limitation to human strength. We hit a wall.
We are finite creatures. Our capacity to carry the weight of a broken world, or even just the daily brokenness of our own disappointments, is incredibly small. When we try to process and manage our profound pain solely in our own strength, it only leads to feeling completely worn out. The weight crushes us.
We are trying to be the heavy lifters of our own souls, and we were never designed for that job. This brings us to the ultimate solution, the radical shift we mentioned. It is the vast contrast between management and surrender.
Those two words represent entirely different universes in how you move through adversity.
Management implies we are still the ones in control. We are adjusting the dials, we are running the internal thermostat, we are holding the weight, trying to balance all the spinning plates of our emotions so nothing crashes to the floor. Management is what relies on the reflexes. Management is tiring.
Surrender, on the other hand, means giving up the illusion of control entirely. It means taking your hands off the wheel.
Which is terrifying at first. Surrendering feels like stepping off a cliff.
It is deeply uncomfortable because surrender means you have to leave the volume up.
Yeah.
It means choosing to actually feel the stark reality of the moment, the sharp sting of the letdown, the grief of the loss, without reaching for a single reflex to numb it. But the crucial key to surrender is that you are not just feeling the pain in isolation. You are feeling it while actively, consciously letting Jesus carry the burden of it.
You are standing in the noise, you are acknowledging the pain, but you are not standing alone.
Exactly. Management says, I am strong enough to handle this. Surrender says, I am not strong enough to handle this, but I know the one who is, and I am deliberately giving it to him.
Let's make this intensely practical for everyone listening right now. I want to encourage you to visualize taking the specific disappointment you are carrying from this week.
The one you thought of earlier.
Maybe it is the situation that immediately came to mind when we started this conversation, that letdown that took your breath away. Instead of minimizing it and saying it is fine, instead of rushing to medicate it with a distraction,
Right.
instead of lashing out at your family or retreating into your room, consciously visualize handing that specific heavyweight over to Christ. Trust his infinite capacity rather than your own frail reflexes.
It is a daily, sometimes hourly practice. When the internal thermostat spikes, when the heat of the disappointment flares up in your chest, your job is not to cool it down with a destructive habit. Your job is to take that heat directly to the Lord.
Say to him, this hurts. The volume is incredibly loud right now, and I am deeply disappointed. But I am casting this care on you. I am throwing this weight at your feet because I trust the truth that you care for me.
Yes.
It changes the entire architecture of how we move through adversity. It takes the burden off our shoulders.
It moves us from the darkness of isolation into true, sustaining communion.
As we bring our time together today to a close, I want to leave you with a challenging, perhaps provocative, new perspective to consider in the days ahead as you face inevitable letdowns. Think deeply about this. What if the disappointment you've been trying so hard to manage or fight or numb is actually the very invitation God is using to draw you out of your isolation?
That is a profound shift in framing. It takes the pain from being a meaningless tragedy to a purposeful catalyst.
What if He is using the disruption of your perfectly laid plans to invite you into a deeper, more authentic, more reliant relationship with Him? What if the pain isn't a roadblock to your spiritual growth, but the actual doorway you have to walk through to find genuine peace?
If we can begin to view our letdowns not as evidence of God's absence, but as profound opportunities for His presence to be made real in our weakness, everything changes. The narrative of our lives changes.
Everything changes. And part of stepping through that doorway involves stepping out of the shadows and into the light of shared experience. We were never meant to process these heavy things alone.
Never.
So we want to extend a warm, sincere invitation to you right now. Step out of your isolation and join the community we have built here at Peters Creek Baptist Church in South Park, Pennsylvania. We are simply a group of broken people learning how to stop managing our pain and start surrendering it together.
And we would be genuinely honored to have you join us on this road.
Here is what our Wesley Friday schedule looks like. For those joining us on the final Friday of each month, we start with dinner from 5:15 to 6 p.m.
It's great food.
It's a fantastic time to just connect, drop the masks, and break bread together.
Then, every single Friday at 6:30 p.m., we gather for large group worship.
Following worship, from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., we break out into our gender-specific small groups. This is where the real, honest conversations happen.
Yeah, the deep stuff.
This is where you can talk about the reflexes, the minimizing, the isolating, in a space that is entirely safe, completely confidential, and free of judgment.
And finally, from 8:30 to 9 p.m., we wrap up the evening at the Crosstalk Cafe. It is a dedicated time for fellowship, a chance to process what we've learned together and to build those vital connections that keep us grounded throughout the rest of the week.
If you have questions, or if you just want to reach out and make a connection before taking that step to attend, we are here for you. You can email Craig Amstone directly at craig.amstone@gmail.tower.com, or you can contact the church office at info@tcbc.tartchurch.
We are walking this road of recovery together. There is always an empty chair waiting for you, and you do not have to carry the weight alone anymore.
Remember the volume knob. When the hurt is loud this week, don't reach to turn it down and risk living in the gray. Leave the volume up. Feel the stark reality of God's presence in the middle of the noise and cast that care entirely onto Him. We will see you on Friday.